And we're back for another rousing day of Shacknews Awards deliberations. We have assembled almost everyone we had here. Ozzy has penned in a lot of his votes, so I will be reading off Ozzy's opinions when we get to the vote part of this. Believe we're going to start today with the best VR game of 2021 Shacknews Award. And yeah, who would like to kick this off with a nomination?
Somebody's gonna. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just say it, but I'll let TJ took over since he reviewed it. Resident Evil 4 VR is the best VR game I've ever played, and the best version of one of the best and most important games of all time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you'd have to come up with a reason why, like there's something, like you'd have to come up with something that could possibly beat Resident Evil VR 4 VR this year. Not only did they take arguably the peak of Resident Evil games and adapt it into a full-on, just like awesome VR style. It's the whole game. It's like nothing is missing. Not even an inch of that game is missing, as far as like the main story goes. Um,
I think the main thing for me there, TJ, like not only is all the content there, but unlike a lot of other VR games, it doesn't pull any punches just because you're playing in VR. The villagers, the cultists, the soldiers, they are on your ass the whole time. It's VR combat. It's honestly what I wanted a little more. Like I spoke to some of the developers of Half-Life Alyx this year for an unrelated project, and they admitted they had to make some concessions because you're playing in VR. Most of the enemies have to be slow and dumb, which is why that game was focused more on puzzles and exploration, which was great. I thought it did that very well. RE4 VR though, the combat, like I got part of what that game does so well, what it's done well since 2005 is making you feel like a badass. I mean, I got to the point where like I could like pop a clip, grab another one, slam it in, pull back, and I just felt like the biggest badass. I was shooting a guy out a window while I was slashing someone else with my knife. I would grab a grenade, throw it, pop off. I mean, you can fire two-handed guns with one hand, and there's actually some balance to that. Like you can just walk up to a Las Plagas with a sniper rifle and go pop, but there's more kickback because you're using it one-handed. The little touches, the little details are just fucking phenomenal.
And like keep in mind, you couldn't use the sniper rifle without aiming down the sights in the original game, in any version of the original game.
Right.
So like you can actually hold the sniper rifle and hip fire it, which gives a whole new dynamic to that gun in Resident Evil. It's incredible the amount of detail they put into like the visceral design of not only how the weapons handle, but also how they reload and like just everything.
Have either of you played the Medal of Honor VR game where you can aim down sights in the sniper?
I have, and
it's very jarring.
Yes,
in VR, especially because you have to close one eye, kind of like it's. I don't think it really transfers well to the platform. So in RE4 VR, is there an aim down sight, or is
there is?
There is,
and like
how does that feel?
The way that it's still a bit hard to control. Like when I was aiming down the sights, I would go into the scope view and then I would slide my arm underneath my other arm so that I could steady my shot.
I would even do things like so in the regular RE4 games, even when you're looking down a sight, it wavers a bit. I would actually hold my breath and it helped. I would go into the shooting range and like handgun, I would actually fire like this. Like I got super into the shooting gallery because to TJ's point, there were certain, like you didn't have all these options in the regular game. If the animation, the knife slash, for example, it was always slash. In this one, I found that where you can do it faster, you can slash vertically. There's a GIF floating around that I sent you, Asif, of, chickens. When they lay eggs, you can eat them for health. In this game, you can grab it, throw it in an enemy's face to stun them, which is just something that I never thought of because you can't do that in the regular RE4. It was never an option that they let you do.
Yeah, and to that to that topic of throwables. I love the way that throwables handle in this game.
Mm-hmm.
You were in the original game, you had to draw out the grenade and then you had to ready up and you saw the arc where Leon was going to throw. In this, you pull the pin out and just toss it however you want. And it actually, like, the physics work around it. To that point, there was a really, 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 really fun. Like, that game makes for some unintentional comedy. There's a part where you come into a room and there's like an altar and there's a bunch of druids around it, and you come in from a second floor balcony, and I just peek over the edge and I'm like, oh, so I pulled out a grenade, pulled the pin out, and just tossed it over the edge of the balcony into the middle of them, and it's like just watching them scatter, blast out in every direction was just like maybe the funniest thing I've seen in a game this year.
I think one of my favorite parts near the end, when you're escaping, you ride like a jet ski, and you actually have to, you kind of you grip this, and you go over a sweet jump. I've replayed that section 3 times just because when you launch yourself, I just got tingles over my whole body because my brain was like, "What are we doing right now?" Yeah, but it was just super fucking fun.
Also, being airborne in VR is a very dangerous game. You can really make people sick if you don't do it right.
Yeah, that is a thing that like they put a lot of effort into in this game, was handling motion sickness and giving you some very distinct options for when you have alternative styles of control. The boat on the lake was the part that I was like trying really hard to get to the most because I needed to see how that was going to play. And I was absolutely shocked to see that, like, even when you're being jerked around by this rope, by this monster that's under the water, I never felt like I was about to hurl. Like,
does the boat like bob on the water or anything?
It does a little bit, but you can also change the options to like lessen that bob. You can actually remove camera bob from the game altogether.
There are a ton, to TJ's point, there are a ton of options. You can customize almost every part of the experience.
Yeah, the reason I ask is I think like immersion is a huge part of good VR, right? Mm-hmm. And it's those instances where something happens in the VR experience that you're not doing in physical real life, right? Like I mentioned, elevation changes they can screw up people's stomachs, right? Like, it seems like they didn't have many times where your immersion was broken by these different gameplay elements.
There's only one part that I noticed they changed. TJ, I don't know if this stood out to you. This only stands out to me because I replay that game like every 2 years. But when you're riding the minecart, near the end, there's a part where it kind of spirals down. They changed the view so that it pulls in closer, because that sort of thing I think they knew would just make people vomit everywhere.
Sure.
Otherwise, though, it's unchanged. And for what it's worth, I get terrible motion sickness in any real life context, whether I'm flying, whether I'm on a roller coaster. I don't do roller coasters just because I enjoy them, but they make me sick, no matter how tame they are. In this, I went full tilt. I was circle strafing. I was whipping around. No problems at all. It felt really smooth. It just felt great the whole time.
Very much the same. Like I never had to take the headset off because I felt sick of this game. I mostly had to stop when the battery would be running low.
Yeah. Now, here another question I have about presence and immersion in this game. The Quest 2 headset is limited in that it does inside-out tracking, and there isn't necessarily tracking behind you. So, David, you're talking about throwing a grenade, shooting this way. Were there any moments while you're playing the game, with Guns Akimbo or whatever, where you felt like it didn't do what you wanted it to do?
Not for me, no. Like, enemies can still hit you behind because, again, like that part of the core RE4 experience isn't changed. But the surround sound would kind of clue you in to where you were getting hit. There's also, just for that sort of thing, so that you don't have to be turning around too much. If you hold back on the right stick, you do the quick 180 turn. That they changed, rather than like flipping around. The screen goes blank for a second and then it comes back in and you've turned 180 degrees.
Okay, so there's a quick turn like that.
There is, yeah.
Okay.
Also, the one thing that I noticed that kind of glitched out from time to time with the inside-out tracking is that, like I said, I would steady my aim. So I would often like pull the gun out and then put my wrist up and fire like so. And occasionally, because of the way the inside-out tracking works, like it would do this weird glitch where Leon's hand would be like above it, and then once I like took them apart, it would snap back to properly tracking.
That's occlusion. That's going to happen with any VR setup, but it is especially noticeable in that Quest form factor to me, because there are no, when you're in a light room, right, in the Valve Index or something, there's less occlusion. So I was curious how they handled that. Early VR games, you used to see this floating ghost hand. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, where it seems like better VR devs have started figuring out ways maybe to not show that. The game may still be breaking, but they've gotten better at hiding that. I think it sounds like that's what they may be doing here.
And it wasn't like a floating ghost hand. It's just that one hand would be stuck in a spot for just a second, and then once you move out of that position, it tracks it.
Yeah, again. It probably has to do with the occlusion thing, where it saw it, and then it's like, we're just going to keep it where it was, where we thought it was last, and then once it comes back in, that's not too bad. That stuff won't break immersion as badly as like the floating ghost hand, or what's really frustrating is like if you were shooting to the left or something and it didn't register that. I've played VR games where that was the case.
I've never had that happen in this game.
Good. No, that's hugely important. Yeah, that's awesome. I want to nominate a game. Gorilla Tag. It's literally a game where you just run around as an ape and play tag, and it's all hand locomotion based. So you're just like, and you tap people. But no, I wanted to give them an honorable mention. Obviously, we know where this is going, but shout out to the devs at Gorilla Tag.
I'm just kind of curious, like graphically, where does this game fall for you guys?
David and I have been talking about this a bit.
Yeah, TJ and I talked about this just about this game like almost every day for the past couple of weeks. The game doesn't look. It looks about as good as RE4 HD has looked on like a PS3. When I cast from the Quest 2 to my TV so my wife can watch, in the headset it looks phenomenal. They redid certain textures like control panels and such that it looks like a proper VR game. It doesn't look as good as like Half-Life Alyx, but that was built for VR from the ground up. This is no mere port, which is something I want to talk about a little bit later. It's really extraordinary to the level of detail they've taken this graphically when you're in the game.
And it sounds like what you guys are talking about is more. It's not the game's fault. It's more of a limitation of the processor on the Quest 2 that they had to, maybe make it lower fidelity graphics than a Half-Life Alyx that's on Steam would, right. Especially with the Valve Index optics and stuff.
To its credit, completely consistent frame rate throughout the entire game.
Yeah.
No juddering, no stuttering whatsoever.
Yeah, that's hugely important because that's the easiest way to make someone nauseous in VR is to have a slowdown in an action-packed game like that.
But what it boils down to is like this game it's not the best looking VR game that will ever come out. I think Half-Life Alyx in of itself is just like a masterpiece in that.
It won best graphics from us last.
But like as far as controls go, I don't think I've ever played a game that felt more immersive when it came to gunplay and melee in the same setting. Like you can straight up juggle the weapons. You can toss the gun in the air, toss the knife in the air, and then catch the gun in your left hand and catch the knife in your right hand. You can actually switch which hands you use the weapons with.
And I'm glad you brought up melee because that was something that was definitely missing from Alyx. The wrench, right? Like it's something that's kind of iconic in the Half-Life series. To not have that was kind of a minus for me in that game, that they didn't have any kind of melee option or
that's kind of what I meant. Like, as great as Alyx was, they obviously made some concessions that this game was like, nope, fuck, this is Resident Evil 4. It's going to be Resident Evil 4.
The level of control on gunplay and melee in this game makes me feel like this ought to, if they were to ever, fingers crossed, do something like, I don't know, a VR version of Metal Gear, this would be the blueprint for control.
Yeah.
Because you can straight up do CQB in this game.
Yeah, and it's weird because this is a third-person game, right? And this is obviously you're in a first person perspective when you're playing this, so there's elements of the gameplay that had to have been. I know it's not necessarily a remake, but the combat mechanics had to be completely rebuilt for this game.
And they did a good job of that too. Like where you stun an enemy and go up and do a physical attack on them, it pulls out to a third person camera. Leon does his kick or his suplex, and then it goes back to first person camera.
Not
Because
jarring at all. Not jarring at all.
If he was out there doing roundhouse kicks and you actually had to spin the camera around, that would be like.
Here, but on the flip side, if they didn't, you wouldn't really feel anything visceral. Like you just see a quick blur of like a leg, and it wouldn't feel impactful the way Resident Evil 4 always has.
Yeah.
But anything like whether it's pushing crates, kicking, suplexing, it looks good. And I was never once. It actually, like TJ said, pull out, and that's right. But it doesn't show like a transition of like zooming out and then zooming back in. It's seamless, so you never feel like you've been pulled out of the experience even for a second.
I think stuff like that are just it's come with trial and error in VR over time. That transition animation actually adds to nausea. Being quick, like that quick 180 option that you have in this game, stuff like that actually reduces nausea. So that's interesting to hear. It seems like they took a lot of time focusing on comfort in this game to make sure that you would not feel ill playing it.
They even did a quality of life thing that I think all of the Resident Evil 4 ports should have done, which is straight up letting you turn off QuickTime events and just enjoy the scene without having to do that shit.
Yeah.
The motions that they have you do for QuickTime events make sense, and I actually enjoyed them. But I enjoy the fact that, like, for instance, there's the knife fight with Krauser where if you mess up at any point, you have to start the whole scene over again. You just straight up turn off QTEs and then just watch the whole thing play out without having to worry about that shit.
Yeah. And to your question, Asif, about graphics level of detail, no matter where I was in this game, the level of detail, the fidelity was more than enough that I would just stop and look around. I would go up close and examine things. And it's a beautiful game. It's not Half-Life Alyx, but that's one reason I got behind this. I have a lot of ethical concerns with Facebook, but the more I thought about it, and the reason I went out and bought a Quest 2 after a lot of internal debate was because I feel like Armature took that money and made something legitimately beautiful that's going to further VR in a lot of ways. Capcom hasn't released numbers, but there have been a lot floating around. This is moving units. This is pulling people into VR. It's the first game with an ending that I actually beat. I never finished Alyx. I fell off of it. This I could not stop playing. And I feel like Armature went above and beyond with this to make it. When this game was announced, I think it was earlier this year, I wrote it off. I forgot about it because I was like, I love RE4, but I bought it 6 times or whatever. But then I saw a preview, and then talking to TJ just made me realize, like, this is not just a slapdash port. There's been a lot of time and effort spent on this. I do not regret. I bought the $300 Quest 2. I didn't need like the 256 gigabyte model. And to me, it's money well spent. Like, I love this thing. I finished it last night. I'm going to start a new playthrough probably this coming weekend after I've played some more Game of the Year stuff, just because I want to go through it again.
Yeah. And like,
I do think it's unfortunate that it's a game that's only on one VR headset device. You know, this
it is.
There are a lot of PlayStation VR headsets out there. And I'm sure those PS4 players would love to play this game.
Yeah.
And then there's all sorts of VR headsets that are capable on PC. So it's like Facebook dominating the VR scene is good in the sense that they have a gajillion dollars and they can give Armature money to make these games. And they did that with Respawn, with the Medal of Honor game. Like, they're acquiring things like Beat Saber and stuff. So, like, it's good in that sense, but man, is it bad in the sense that it's a closed off system. And they are almost more proprietary than Apple when it comes to how they're handling their software ecosystem.
Yeah.
That's not great.
I hate seeing Quest 2 exclusive every time I see it, because there is a good field out there of good headsets, like you said, and like PS5 is about to get its own later this year.
Like Sony, people forget, like Sony actually disclosed VR HMD sales. Oculus has never. They've never told us, not once. And they told us that it's losing over $1 billion a quarter for them. So it's like they're selling this hardware at a loss. The software investments they're making are probably not profitable either. So it's like, this reminds me of the tablet division at Microsoft in the 2000s, where every year, here's a new tablet, guys. It runs Windows. And no one bought it. You know, and occasionally there would be some cool proof of concept on it, you know? Or, you know, I remember there was a CES where Bill Gates showed us the Surface table. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Microsoft spent a decade working on multi-touch things, and they never really nailed it. And then Apple came in and said, here's the iPad. And they created the App Store, and there was, you know, very good ecosystem for apps there. This feels a lot like that. A company that's moved out of its core competency towards hardware, has not turned a profit once, and there's other companies that are watching them. And I just feel like this industry, if it is to take off, desperately needs competition.
Absolutely.
And stuff like this is good and bad. It's good because it introduces more people to VR. It's bad because it's closed off. And that's where I'm conflicted about it. Like, I really wish that this game was on PC, and I would love to play it. But I also think that it would be a more impressive game if I could play it with a proper GPU backing it, as opposed to a mobile processor.
It's interesting because I wonder if Armature had a certain line they either didn't want to cross or weren't allowed to cross because Capcom they were having problems with the external studio working on the RE4 remake, so they've pulled it in-house. And I will say, for whatever it's worth, that this RE4 VR raised the bar for what I hope to see from the remake, because this game, which isn't really a remake, is just that damn good. It changes the experience that damn much.
Yeah.
It's just a fun story. That game
is just a fun. What am I? The only cutscene I still watch after like 16 some years of just blazing through this game is when Salazar says to Leon, "I will send my right hand to dispose of you," and Leon's like, "Your right hand comes off." It's just fun. It's just a fun time.
Yeah.
Video conversations with Salazar and Sadler take on a whole different approach when you can rudely gesture at them with your free hand.
You know what I would do to
I started doing the bird in this game.
No, but you can do one of these.
You can go like this. So whenever there were to be a mob coming, just because I'm a total dork, I would do the rocks. Just bring it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Or like Morpheus.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, it's really like Armature. I believe I've nominated them for another award this year because this isn't Capcom. Capcom obviously like checked in, made sure they were doing a good job, and they blew it away. This is the definitive version of RE4 for me now.
Awesome. I guess that's. Does anyone else have a nomination other than Gorilla Tag and RE4?
No.
Okay. Well, I think we should put it to a vote then.
Here.
Unless you guys, I think TJ and David, I think you guys covered just about everything we could on this.
Yeah.
You've done a good job of showcasing why this game is special this year and why it's done a lot for the VR platform just as a whole. But yeah, we'll start voting here. I guess David,
I will vote for Gore Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
Gore Resident Evil?
That's right.
An Al Gore based Resident Evil.
Okay.
That's right.
Oh no.
Denny, you got a vote here?
Yeah, I'm definitely in on RE4. I mean, it's one of my favorite games, and you guys sold me on the fact that it didn't give you motion sickness, which has been a problem for me trying to use VR in the past. So definitely going for RE4.
Okay, Donovan.
Yeah, RE4 for sure. I'm glad that game turned out good because I remember when they revealed it, it didn't look all that impressive. So it's good that it turned out to be a great game.
That's the problem with VR. Super hard.
I was just gonna say,
VR
unless you're in a headset, you can't really accurately gauge it.
Well, in the trailers,
like you capture gameplay or you stream it to your TV, or if you're streaming it on Twitch, you lose the fidelity that you would have otherwise, because once again, that processor is not great.
Well, and the trailers made it look like a shooting gallery, and it's just like,
Yeah, they
no,
did.
it's the whole dang game.
It did kind of. It gave me like a Walking Dead Saints and Sinners vibe when I saw the trailer. But then when I watched your gameplay, TJ, I was like, oh, this is like the game.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a huge difference. Greg, what you got?
RE4. TJ and David made really good points, and like I kind of want to try it now because I would get motion sickness really easy in VR too, Denny. So if it didn't affect David, it might not affect me.
Yeah, Greg is very sensitive to simulation illnesses. So yeah, I think that's definitely a huge test for VR as a medium to expand beyond this niche that it's in. It has to be more comfortable, and I honestly think that headset itself is uncomfortable at times. So it's like they've gotten better at making headsets comfortable, but they're still cumbersome, and I think that's an issue for the whole industry, not just one specific hardware maker. It's a form factor issue. TJ, you're voting for RE, right?
Yeah.
Bill?
Just like last year, the closest I've ever been to buying a VR headset was this argument. So, yeah, RE4.
Sam?
RE4.
Okay. Blake?
Yeah, I read TJ's review. I've watched his gameplay. We've talked about it on the dump. And, he's done more than enough to convince me that RE4 VR is the way to go.
I'm glad they did this to RE4 and not 2. Because I would not want to play RE2 in VR. It's too scary.
Yeah.
It'd be horrifying.
I think RE4 is like an action adventure-y game enough where it's less terrifying. Like, I do not want to be playing RE2 or even 3 in VR.
You turn around and Mr. X is there and you're just like, nope.
Yeah.
Not a chance.
Literally throw it in a lake or something. But yeah, I'm gonna vote for Gorilla Tag. No, I'll vote for RE. Chris, are you voting for RE or what you got?
Yeah, I'll go with David and TJ. They explain clearly and concisely why it's the pick for this year.
It seems. That's our first unanimous vote.
Oh, we had one yesterday.
Nice.
We did?
We had one. We did, actually, yeah.
Which was shocking.
That was our first unanimous vote of the day.
There you go.
That's true.
There you
That's
go.
true.
I can't remember yesterday. I can't.
Well, I'll
No one expects you to. That's why I'm here.
This is all going to air in this weird sequence, so like my t-shirts are going to change, and no one's going to know what day we film these things.
I will say that 2 unanimous votes in a year might be a first.
That might be a first for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, RE4 is pretty great, but you might want to check out, if you don't have a Quest 2, you might want to check out Gorilla Tag, is all I'm saying. It's free.
I will look at it.
It's free. That might be a fun stream, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, congratulations to Armature, and I guess Meta, right?
Yeah.
Meta?
Whatever. Yeah, whatever
I don't
it is
I
now.
don't know. You walk into an art gallery, all of a sudden the tiger's not eating the wildebeest, and they're
It's not
dancing,
even
your
called
head's
Oculus
bobbing.
Quest
What
2
the
anymore.
fuck
It's
is
the
that?
Meta Quest.
Meta. That's so
Ew.
dumb. I hate that.
Welcome to
So,
the
yeah.
Meta Quest.
Congratulations, Meta.
Just call it what I
Armature.
call it, which is
Give
the
it to
RE4
Armature.
machine. Yeah.
Give it to
There you go.
Armature. They deserve it.
Armature.
Yes.
You deserve this award. Congratulations, you are the Shacknews Best VR Game of 2021. It is decided.
Yeah.